Order. I call Nuk Korako to make his maiden statement.
He te mana whakawā tēnā koe. Tēnei hoki te mihi atu ki a koe te kaihautu o te wako ai te roa. O te pirimia, Right Honourable John Key, tēnā koe. Tēnā hoki koe te rakatira o te rōpū reipa. The Honourable David Parker, tēnā koe. Huri no te whare miere nei ka mihi ki ka mema katoa. Ko kai tahu ka te mamoi waitaha te raki amo tēnei e mihi atu ki te mana whenua o te waha o te ika, te ati aua tēnā koutou. E haere mai i ka waka katoa e tau mai nei ki te whanganui a tāra. Ko tūtahau Nuk Korako a hau, ko aoraki mauka e tū mai ake kei uta. Mārangi te awa o Waitaki, raua ko Waimakariri ki te tai o Mahanui. Ko te whare Mahanui, hoki raua ko te whare o wheke kei te rapaki o te raki whakaputa e tū ana. Hei anō, tēnā tātou katoa. Mr. Speaker, like all others who have entered this House over the past 150 years, I cannot hide or disguise my humility. It certainly is a time to reflect upon family, my life experiences to date, and those who assisted me on the journey to this House. Sir, I come from a working class background. My father, Te Here Maka Momo Korako, was a World War II returned serviceman and a freezing worker. And my mum, Hene Elizabeth Manahira Korako, a gentle and loving person who passed away when I was only 10 years old, leaving behind 9 children, me and my 8 sisters. It was not long before we found ourselves in Chumley Children's Home to give our father time to organise life without our mother. This sad event started a relationship with me in Chumley Home that continues to this day. My father worked hard to keep us together and to ensure that we all understood and lived by our family values, and instilled in me the significance of ancestry, leadership, education and humility. He taught us to be proud of being who we were and the importance of being able to move seamlessly between the two worlds of the Māori and the non-Māori. Education was paramount in our family, and I was lucky to be given the opportunity to attend St Stephen's School, Bombay, Auckland. Sir, it is fair to say that I did not expect to be standing here as a Member of Parliament and addressing the House of Representatives all these years later. Like many young Kiwis, the call of the OE took me overseas on a much extended journey than was originally planned, where rugby and the tourism industry kept me offshore for over 20 years. The hallmark of that journey, however, was meeting and marrying my beautiful wife, Christine, and a few years later, with a family pending and a desire to raise our children as Kiwis, we came home to Canterbury, more specifically to Christchurch and Ngaitahu's Riviera, Rapaki on Littleton Harbour. Rapaki is one of the ancestral communities of Ngaitahu. When you arrive, it is a little like being transported to another time. Our 4 boys, now aged between 17 and 22, grew up in this kainga or village, surrounded by our immediate and wider whānau. Growing up in Rapaki in a safe and nurturing environment gave them the opportunity to learn the tikaka of their home place and their marae, and to enjoy and experience many adventures surrounded by mountains and sea. It is their safe haven and always will be. It was not unusual for Chris to feed 10 children at lunch or dinner time, or a family neighbour to do the same. That very environment created lifelong values for our children, their cousins and the friends they brought home. Sir, my uncle Ben Couch, a 3-term National Party MP, Minister of Police and Māori Affairs, and a New Zealand and Māori All Black, was also raised in the same village. In reflecting on my wider whakapapa, I am reminded that some of my tupuna were familiar with the political environment. Hoani Paratene, the first ever Southern Māori MP, was my great-uncle. My grandfather, Tūtahau Nuk Korako Tuarua, represented Ngaitahu at the Diamond Jubilee of Queen Victoria in London in 1897 and at the opening of the Australian Parliament in 1901. My other grandfather, James Duncan Manihira, was the 1926 Māori All Black. Sir, these role models have instilled in me the idea that there is value in striving for something more than the mundane, more than the trappings of comfort, and to achieve something beyond myself, which is what I am doing in this special place. Mr. Speaker, I do bring a vision with me, and that is about where we are heading as a nation. I recently came across a National Party manifesto from the Māori MPs in the late 1940s. Quote, "New Zealand as a whole is under a great debt, one that has not always been sufficiently recognised to the Māori people for the role they have played in the economic development of this country. What you have received by way of social security and benefits is your due. You, as a people, have contributed to the pool from which these benefits came. That is why we appeal to you to assist in the task of increased production. It is our aim to expand and develop the Māori land schemes inaugurated in 1929 by Sir Aparanga Ngata. We know to what extent the human element is consciously developed along with work on such lands. That must be taken into consideration if we are to secure the maximum results from such a policy. The promotion of a healthy, intelligent people, disciplined in the habits of industry and business practice, equipped by the economic resources of their lands to enter with full confidence into the wider industrial life of this country." Unquote. Mr. Speaker, this illustrates how much has not changed in terms of vision, but how much has changed in terms of achievement. The Māori economy and Māori participation in our national economy has advanced so dramatically in the past 30 years, and I have been honoured to be a participant in moving that forward. I have operated my own businesses, worked on Māori incorporations and trusts, like Mawhera, the board of Ngāi Tahu Holdings Corporation, and represented my hapu at iwi governance level on Te Runanga o Ngāi Tahu. The Ngāi Tahu settlement brokered by the Bolger-led national government was a milestone for South Island development, and I look forward to continuing to make a contribution to Māori economical advancement while sitting in this House, because that is the only pathway to long-term prosperity and the betterment of ourselves. And it is not just for Māori, it is for all New Zealanders. Mr. Speaker, it is important, though, to acknowledge that I may move easily amongst the Māori communities, but I also share a common set of values with all New Zealanders. My recent Banks Peninsula and Port Hills political campaigns have clearly shown that many other New Zealanders believe that I have something to contribute to all of society. Mr. Speaker, I am deeply grateful to our people of the Port Hills for their continued support, especially our National Party members, campaign team, army of volunteers and young Nats. I want to acknowledge our Canterbury Western Regional Chair, Roger Bridge, and my campaign manager, Catherine Lancaster. As most of you here will know, there is something remarkably rewarding about getting amongst the community and engaging with a constituency. Sure, some will slam the door in your face, and some might be genuinely offended by your politics. But that is who we are. We are not homogenous. We are diverse, we are passionate, and we are opinionated. Thank God. Sir, it would be fair to say that I have never lived in a suburb that is built upon privilege. In fact, for much of my life, I have lived in my traditional kāinga. My neighbours have been successful and struggling business owners, labourers and academics, bureaucrats and tradesmen, beneficiaries and retirees. These are my people. These are Nationals people. Mr. Speaker, I have lived the National Party philosophies most of my life, despite my family background, where many of them were typical Labour Party supporters who lived the old adage that Labour looked after the worker. I have taken a fair bit of stick, especially on the front line in Littleton, as a scrutineer for National in the Port voting booth. But that was my decision, and I stood by it. The myth that National is simply there to look after the wealthy has been seriously challenged in this past election. thousands upon thousands of voters abandoned their traditional roots to give their party vote to National, because there was a greater accord with what they wanted in government. Voters responded to the quality of leadership and have been drawn to a unified party that really did care and still does passionately about what matters to New Zealanders. Sir, I am sure that working New Zealanders have new expectations of themselves. New generations certainly understand that the state is not there to provide their every need. They genuinely believe that the government is a partnership, us and them, and we each have to tow our own weight. Mr. Speaker, Labour may purport to represent the working New Zealander, but a bevy of career bureaucrats does not reflect the aspirations of the young checkout person at the Ferrymead Countdown, or the Littleton wharfie or the process worker in Bromley, who all want better lives with jobs, fair pay, home ownership and the likes. Preaching world class from Ponsonby does really fall upon deaf ears. Mr. Speaker, there are three immediate priorities for me for this term. One is to build the brown blue. Many Māori have lost sight of the huge gains made under successive national-led governments, and one only has to reflect on the Ngaitahu and Tainui settlements, and more recently the groundbreaking Tūhoe settlement, to get a sense of what is possible. Whānau order and the underprivileged focused partnership schools have arisen under national, and the modern iwi leader engagements have given effect to an unprecedented partnership approach. In the last election, even without a candidate contesting the Māori seats, National still secured 14% of the party vote within Te Taitunga. And over the next 3 years, I want to assist in building that, and not only in Te Waipounimi, but also across Te Ika Māui. Mr. Speaker, I want to champion the brown-blue cause. Mr. Speaker, the second priority is the Christchurch earthquake rebuild. We all admire the incredible earthquake recovery and rebuild work carried out to date under Minister Brownlee. And I want to assure him that, like my years as a feisty rugby playing number 8, I am keen to put my two shoulders behind the pack and add my weight as required. I know taking us through the next few years will require a continued team effort, and I want to be part of that team. Mr. Speaker, my third priority is that I will deliver on what I promised to the Port Hills constituents during my campaign by continuing to work hard within our Port Hills electorate alongside our community leaders in developing vibrant communities with plenty of opportunities supported by great leadership. Sir, I want to acknowledge my extended and immediate whānau and friends, including those who have travelled here today to share this occasion. E ka whanauka, e ka hoa e te hunga kainga e hara mai ki te tautoko ahau, ko tēnei mihi aroha kia koutou. It is also the time to acknowledge these wonderful people who have stood to support me in place of my taua and paua and my mum and dad. My auntie Mamai Warnes, who is here today and was once a young Nat in Wellington over 70 years ago. My auntie Rimmer and Charlie Sabritsky and Uncle Dudley and Melissa Couch from Rapaki. My father-in-law Derek Willard in Australia and Alec Graham from Palmerston North. And my oldest and dearest mentor, Lockie Griffin, the unofficial mayor of Governor's Bay. And to the person who has been there for me ever since we met on the Grand Canal in Venice 24 years ago, who bore me 4 sons and saved the Korako name from extinction. Chris, I am because you are. And to my sons, Maximilian, Nicholas, Michael and James Oliver, he mahi kai hoaka, he mahi kai takata. My sons, anything worthwhile will always require a considerable effort. This is how I got here today. Finally, Mr. Speaker, it is difficult to stand here being humble when there is so much to be proud of. I am in this Parliament, however, as a list MP representing the National Party interests. I cannot be other than a Māori and Ngaitahu, but it is my duty to address the needs of all New Zealanders and to concern myself with the whole spectrum of citizenship. Today, Mr. Speaker, I pledge myself to that task. Huri noa te whare paremata, e mihi atu kia koutou katoa, mauri ora.
Order. Order. I call Stuart Smith.
Thank you, Mr.